July 29, 1900. On a warm summer evening in the northern Italian town of Monza, a festive public gathering was instantly transformed into a scene of historic horror. King Umberto I of Italy had just finished attending an athletic prize ceremony and was stepping into his open-air carriage, waving gracefully to a cheering crowd. Suddenly, a man pushed through the security lines, pulled a 5-shot revolver from his pocket, and fired 4 times. 3 bullets struck the monarch directly in the chest. Within minutes, the king bled to death in the arms of his panicked aides. The shooter was Gaetano Bresci, a disciplined, fiercely ideologue Italian-American anarchist who had traveled all the way from Paterson, New Jersey with a single lethal objective. This sudden act of political violence instantly brought an end to a 22-year reign. King Umberto I had overseen a highly turbulent period of rapid industrial growth, colonial expansion, and severe, bloody social unrest. The fatal shots in Monza did not just kill a man. They sent a terrifying shockwave through the royal houses of Europe, proving that the crown was no shield against the rising tide of radical discontent.
The 1900 assassination in Monza was a dark, definitive harbinger of the fierce political radicalism and ideological violence that would come to completely define the first half of the 20th century. It shattered the long-held Victorian-era belief that European societies could smoothly modernize without triggering explosive class conflict. The moment permanently altered the public psyche and the political discourse of the Italian state. It proved to the world that terrorism could successfully alter a nation's domestic policy, setting a dangerous precedent for future radical movements. As the years pushed forward into the 20th century, the deep societal fractures that had driven Bresci to pull the trigger were never fully healed. The tentative peace achieved by the young king would eventually be torn apart by the immense trauma of World War I. The culture of political violence, assassination, and radical polarization born at the turn of the century would re-emerge with even greater fury, eventually paving the political pathway for the collapse of Italian democracy and the rise of Benito Mussolini's fascist regime, showing that the embers of discontent left unresolved in 1900 would continue to burn the nation for decades.
The assassination of King Umberto I remains a highly significant, sobering chapter in the global history of political extremism. It stands as a timeless historical reminder of the high price a nation pays when its leadership disconnects from the economic suffering of its people, and how quickly individual radicalization can rewrite the destiny of a state. As we look across our modern world, where political polarization is once again rising and the security of democratic and national leaders faces unprecedented challenges, the events of 1900 offer vital lessons. How do you assess the delicate, complex balance between ensuring the absolute physical security of public leaders and protecting the fundamental, sacred rights of public dissent and political protest? Can a state ever be truly secure through force alone, or must stability be built entirely on social justice? We want to hear your analytical insights and unique perspectives, so please share your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you found this comprehensive historical breakdown valuable, please hit that like button, share this video with a fellow history enthusiast, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you never miss another deep dive into the epic, world-shaping moments of our shared human past. Thank you for watching, stay safe, and we will see you in the next video.
Why Gaetano Bresci crossed an ocean to assassinate a king, we must analyze the highly volatile political environment of the late 19th century. This was an era where the explosive growth of the Industrial Revolution had created massive wealth for the elite, but left millions of working-class families trapped in grinding poverty, facing starvation wages and zero political representation. Out of this systemic inequality arose a radicalized, militant, global anarchist movement. Anarchists of this era championed a tactical doctrine known as propaganda of the deed, the belief that symbolic, high-profile acts of violence against political figures would shock the working class into a global revolution. They systematically targeted heads of state, viewing monarchs, presidents, and prime ministers not as human beings, but as the literal, breathing symbols of an oppressive social and economic order. In Italy, this tension reached a bloody breaking point in 1898 during the infamous Bava Beccaris massacre in Milan. When thousands of workers marched peacefully to protest soaring bread prices, General Fiorenzo Bava Beccaris ordered his troops to fire heavy artillery directly into the unarmed crowd, killing hundreds of civilians. King Umberto I committed a fatal political error. He publicly congratulated the general and awarded him the prestigious Cross of the Order of Savoy. For Gaetano Bresci, living in New Jersey, this royal approval of mass murder was the ultimate provocation. He vowed to avenge the fallen citizens of Milan, viewing the king's death as a mandatory act of revolutionary justice.
The assassination of King Umberto I sent profound, terrifying shockwaves directly through the foundations of the Italian monarchy and the state government. In Rome, ministers met in emergency midnight sessions, terrified that the assassination in Monza was the opening signal for a nationwide violent social uprising. The government responded with immediate, aggressive security crackdowns, arresting known radical leaders, shutting down left-wing newspapers, and tightening internal security policies to safeguard public figures. Bresci himself was captured alive, spared from the death penalty due to Italian law, but sentenced to life in solitary confinement inside the notorious Santo Stefano prison, where he would die under suspicious circumstances less than a year later. The tragedy forced a sudden, delicate transition of power to the king's 30-year-old son, who ascended the throne as Victor Emmanuel III. The young monarch inherited a deeply fractured, fragile nation on the absolute brink of civil war. Recognizing that continuing his father's hardline policies of military repression would only invite more violence and destroy the monarchy's legitimacy, Victor Emmanuel III chose a radically different path. He quietly pivoted toward a more liberal, conciliatory political strategy, appointing progressive prime ministers who introduced landmark labor reforms, legalized peaceful strikes, and brought the working-class parties into the democratic process, buying the kingdom precious decades of stability.